The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
Good morning and welcome to Guardian Radio AM. Today is finally Friday, July 3rd. It's a little after 11 o'clock in the morning. Once again, this is C.A. Newry and I shall be your host for the day. We're going to have an open line Friday. That means we can talk about what you want to talk about. I mean, the news is buzzing, right? Social media is buzzing, right? And so I'm willing to engage you, have some conversation. Of course, as usual, I always have one or two things I want to talk about. Right? I still want to talk about our march towards the Bahamas independence celebration. It's 53 years. What does that mean? What does maturity mean? When you reach 50, you're old, right? You can start being compared, contrast to older people, older civilizations, older countries, all right? You can't say, man, we young. We're young. So I want to talk about that. But this conversation, I want to concentrate about when I say our, I mean the Bahamas' historic relationship with the United States. Let me phrase that and frame that better, right? We're about to celebrate our 53rd Independence Day celebration, which is July 10th. And the United States is about to celebrate how much years that is. I got to count. Wait, hold on. Get a calculator there and say 2026. Yeah, carry the one, multiply it by square root. And then say 1776. And you get 250 years. See, I do that calculation. 250 years the United States is celebrating their independence. But over that 250 years, before that 250 years, because of the original peoples, and come now, I want to discuss. I want people to join in and have that discussion about our connectivity, our historical connections to the United States, as our Independence Day celebrations are so close. Right? We are connected. So let's start off with that. Historically, we know we had similar peoples here pre-Columbus, right? The narrative of the Bahamas is that we had the Lucayans living here. This was the Lucayan Islands and the Lucayan Sea, right? And they said that those people who've habitated the Bahamas were either, two places, few people know this, either they came up through the Orinoco River, I think that was called, in South America, right? And they slowly sailed this way to the Bahamas. And the next narrative is that they came from Cuba, the Native Americans from Cuba, which is something separate and apart from those who came from South America. Right? The Cubans, they say, came from North Americans, the natives there. And they say that they might have been a mixture of those two sets of people. Right? Of course, the Bahamas have connectivity to the Caribbean, the limestone rocks and the peoples, the Arawak language, the Caribs. Some people know Hutué, who is a hero in Cuba, the Native American there, right? He was an Arawak Indian, I think. Was he? No. Right, well, anyway. And that they say that he was born in the southern area of the Bahamas, moved to Hispaniola, and he then later sailed to Cuba and waged war against the initial Spaniards, right, who tried to invade this land. Continue that narrative, right? We know that the Bahamas had the same Lord Proprietors as Virginia. So it was the Lord proprietors of the Bahama Islands and Virginia. All was basically one country where those who lived in the Bahamas could have sailed to Virginia, United States, and vice versa. Because of the connectivity, they had the same governance. The Lord proprietors, I think it was 6 to 12 of them, right? So we were basically one company. We were a part of the United States at one point in time. Then we know that the colonies separated. The Bahamas stayed with Britain, and the first I don't want to speed that up. The connectivity there we can see in our food. We are amongst maybe 2 Caribbean islands that eat grits. We get that from our close connection to the southern United States, right? I'm not sure if any other Caribbean nation can claim that we have similar food as the United States, right? We like grits. People are familiar with our accent, right? And when I say our, I'm including white Bahamians and black Bahamians because we have a distinctive accent, even though white Bahamians tend to have an independent accent in general. Their accent is uniquely Bahamian. You can listen to it and say, yeah, I recognize that accent. You're from Spanish Wells, or I recognize that accent. You're from Abaco. You're Abaco white Bahamian. But you can go to the Carolinas Islands, not the Carolina on the mainland proper, but on the islands, you can hear that Sigillian and Hopetown accent amongst the white population of the United States and say, that sound Bahamian. And of course, we know the history of the Gullah Geechee and we sounding like them. And we know that that's supposed to happen with the Loyalists. So the narrative come about that when the War of Independence for United States, those who want to be loyal to the crown, some of them immigrated to Bermuda, the Bahamas, Jamaica, as far as Guyana, those. But for the population of the Bahamas, we had a large, the Bahamas population doubled or trebled. And they had a large population of increase in the black population here, right? Our connectivity with Bermuda, and again, we trying to show the connectivity of the Bahamas and United States over the years and how we celebrate independence. The first population of the Bahamas in mass were the Lutheran adventurers, right? And you know that 70 black people, right? Negroes who were expelled from Bermuda, and you could go and follow up this narrative, who were expelled from Bermuda were expelled to the Bahamas. So they always had a black population. I can't say whether, I have to talk to Chris Curry, whether those black population who were expelled to the Bahamas during the 1600s with the Lutheran adventurers, whether they were enslaved people or were they freed people. But they have no records of them being enslaved people. But there are records that some of the Lutheran adventurers imported slave labor with them. The population have been in the Bahamas for a while. We know that William Sales, when they had a shipwreck in Governor's Harbor there, Preacher's Cave, next Preacher's Cave, they went to the United States, again, Virginia, right, asking for help. And help came from Virginia. And we know that we traded pine forest trees, pine wood. And some of that pine wood was used to build Harvard University. And that's a big deal. And you know, Harvard, they maintain their buildings. So some of the original wood that came from the Bahamas is still there at Harvard University. Again, showing our connectivity through history with the United States. And that's something we need to herald. So perhaps we need to send a team to Harvard University and ask where this wood is. Let's take some pictures of this wood, whatever samples of this wood, right? To show that we appreciate our connectivity to them. I'm going to skip and then come backwards again. We know that in Miami, right, Bahamians were some of the first people to populate or to build the city of Miami. We know we have Coconut Grove, Miami, have Coconut Grove here in New Providence, and a number, because we had a wave of Bahamians who migrated to the United States. They migrated to work on a contract, and they migrated to the United States in the early 1900s and round the recession, there's roaring 20s and the 1930s, there was a mass exodus of Bahamians who left the Bahamas to go to the United States to find opportunity because it was rough in the Bahamas. But going backwards now, we know that the first operation of the United States Marine Corps, the first operation of the United States Marine Corps happened in the Bahamas. So when the Marine Corps was instituted, their first operation to say they're going to do a mission, they came to the Bahamas. And that's a connectivity too. And you say, what did they come to the Bahamas to do? That's when the United States invaded the Bahamas. Few people know that. They invaded the Bahamas because, the Bahamas was belonged to the British Crown. You know that they were, in 1776, they fought their War of Independence. And they considered the Bahamas being so close a threat. So they had their Marine Corps sail to the Bahamas and say, man, we taking over this capital, right? And mind you, the Spanish did that too. And you have stories about the Spanish invading the Bahamas and occupying it. You have the United States invaded the Bahamas and occupying it. We have the French invading the Bahamas and occupying it. And we have, just like how we have Spanish wells, we have French wells, island called French wells in the southern part of the Bahamas, right? Right, where French people live, right? And someone said, "But why would the French invade the Bahamas?" That was during the Haitian Revolution when we had a large population of Haitians living. When I say Haitians, Africans, or they call them They call them French Africans at that time, who came from Haiti, right? After the Haitian Revolution, we had a large population of Haitians living in the Bahamas, and Haiti. And we were giving them like free movement through the Bahamas, right? Especially the mulattoes and the white Bahamians who came with their slaves also. And the French surrounded the Bahamas and said, if you allow these people to continue to come to the Bahamas, we will invade you. And that's when we put our first ban on Haitian nationals, say, y'all can't come here no more because these French people plan to invade us. We didn't want them to come to invade us at all. So that's also a part of our history. But again, this narrative is about our connectivity to the United States and over the years and celebrating their heritage and the Bahamian heritage and how we're connected. We know that, and the name just escaped me, but there are several ships that was stopped because, after the British had a blockade about the slave trade, countries, meaning the United States, even Cuba, were impacted because the United Kingdom had the largest naval force and they patrol from the north to the south, and they prevented people from selling slaves. You could sell slaves within the community or the country, but you couldn't sell it on the seas. And Cuba had slavery still, and they were smuggling slaves to the United States, right? And there was one time where a ship run on ground, and black Bahamians mostly, who were sailors and free. So this will have to be post 1838, I assume, where the cargo was going to southern United States, and the black Bahamians said, no, the slave cargo here, once you set aground, they are free. And of course, the governor had to get involved. And the Congress at the time threatened the Bahamas to not invade the Bahamas. They declared war on the Bahamas. And a few people realize that history too, that the United States declared war on the Bahamas. And when I say the Bahamas, of course, we were a British territory, but the Bahamas all the same. And the British had to get involved. We had to write the crown and say these peoples have declared war against the Bahamas over slavery, and because we commandeered their slave property, and we said we setting them free, and United Kingdom came and negotiated with United States, the newly United States government, and paid them off. Said, okay, we do not condone slavery in our territory, but we will pay you for whatever damages happen, and that's how we avoided war. The Bahamas, in quotes again, against the United States. It's part of our history that people should know, or at least have a reasonable knowledge of what happened there. We know that we have had black Seminoles coming from Florida, right? And I use the word purposely black Seminoles because Seminoles and black Seminoles are two different entities, even though they have a commonality amongst them. Black Seminoles mean that they're Africans who lived with the Native American Seminole Indians, right? And we know that at one point in time, they had the Seminole War, like three different Seminole wars. And the last two, they say there was a war of black people against the United States government and not necessarily an Indian war because of how much black Seminoles there were at that time. The black Seminoles lived in what they call the bayou and things in Florida, swamps. And they intermarry with some of the natives there. But slavery was still existing in the United States. So that's where the Chief Bowleg came to the Bahamas in that narrative. And the Bowleg family should be familiar, and those related with this family, where Bowleg came to the Bahamas and negotiated with the governor and said that we have some Africans that live amongst us. The Spanish has sold Florida, ceded Florida to the United States, right? And they still have slavery and they want to re-enslave the African population amongst us. Can we move these Africans here to the Bahamas? So that's where we got black Seminoles to Andros. And if you read some of our House of Assembly records, they made reference to this meeting also. So we also had black Seminoles in I guess they'll call it the northern western part of Andros. And it gives a narrative of them living in Andros for a period of time without the government even knowing. They're sailing back and forth. And we also have stories of Seminole Indians going to Long Island, not just Andros, but to Long Island and all those what I call the western side of the Bahamas. And that story must be told too, that all Bahamians are familiar. They don't necessarily have to know it in detail, but should be familiar with our connectivity to the United States, right? Then you have the underground saltwater railroad. And this is new to most Bahamians now, that it's such a thing. An underground, let me see to get the right word. It's the saltwater underground railroad. And then most Bahamians should be familiar with the underground railroad. We know that it was an escape route in the United States where black and white Americans, I can use that word, used to smuggle enslaved people for them to go up north. And they go up north to New York where slavery was abolished. And they further up north to Canada, of course, Canada being under the crown too, like the Bahamas, where slavery was abolished, right? So most of them were trying to get to Canada. But people in Florida had a tough time getting to Florida. And then there's some states, surrounding states, Florida, it was just rougher to get through so many different states to get to freedom. But it was easier to go southward. To go to either Mexico and southward to go to the Bahamas. And we had a number of underground railroad personnel who would smuggle African Americans or enslave African Americans to get freedom and live in the Bahamas. And a part of our history where it is told where we had black Bahamians who would, in the dark of night or early morning, would sail to Florida, to Biscayne Bay, and pick up African Americans there, and we would bring them to the Bahamas to experience freedom. And that's a part of our heritage too, assisting Black Americans to get freedom in the Bahamas. And I think that story needs to be part of our tourism product, that we have a connectivity with African Americans from as early as the 1800s, post 1838, and we helped smuggle and freed a number of enslaved persons, enslaved Africans living in the United States, right? So we have that history, and that history must be told also, right? So that's the Seminole Indians connectivity, that's the Saltwater Underground Railroad, right? And actor connectivity, that. And don't forget Prohibition, and the Bahamas connection with Prohibition. And most Americans are not familiar about our role, the Bahamas' role in their Prohibition, their history. We've been always involved in American history. We was involved in American history when they had their War of Independence, their Civil War, and I go back and forth with that. In the War of Independence, of course, we were the American War of Independence, because we were on the British side, right? They staged their operation from the Bahamas and to invade the United States during rum running or prohibition. We call it rum running in the Bahamas. The United States call it prohibition. The state basically sanctioned, and I can say basically sanctioned, I put those in quotes, Bahamians to smuggle rum into the United States, right? We have stories and narrative of Al Capone coming to the Bahamas and the likes of them coming to the Bahamas and having base going back and forth. And this was a boom in the Bahamas then, where we finally got new docks, new roads, new light. And so the governor, the system at the time, relished what was happening, and they facilitated. They helped whoever wanted to do rum running, right? They say, well, this is what you need to do. You won't get prosecuted here. Just, in fact, you can store the rum on Bay Street proper. And we even protect it with our police force until you were able to smuggle it out of the Bahamas to the United States. So we will always have that connectivity. A number of Bahamians, black and white, and some people in the Bahamas think only white people benefited, white Bahamians benefited from rum running. But we had black millionaires there too who were rum runners. Now, I'm not sure how that narrative of black Bahamians who were rum runners escape our history. But, you know, we tend to use the Simonet family. That narrative, so they became rich from that. And then the negative narrative of saying, oh, it was illegal activity. It was not illegal in the Bahamas. In fact, the government encouraged them, give them license, like privateers of old, and say, you got to do what you got to do, and we'll help you because we need the money. And through whatever taxes and whatever benefits, the Bahamas sanctioned it. So it was not an illegal thing in the Bahamas. It was illegal in the United States, but that's their country, right? And so we must also research and find out what other family benefited from there. I know Bimini benefited from rum running, being so close to the United States. They had a number of hotels. In fact, some of the first hotels in the Bahamas was in Bimini because we had a number of people from the United States who do their connections here and dealings here. Even though the whiskey, I think the real McCoy, I think that was when they come from Ireland, they're based in the Bahamas and then scurried on into the United States. But again, a number of Bahamians would have to go and research, again, our connectivity. And we celebrating how we are connected to the United States. Not just that both of us have our independence celebrations, Independence Day, in July, but historically, we've always been involved in American politics. And I'm going back and forth now trying to remember some details about that. But We know that during the Cold War, the American president, the British Prime Minister, and someone else, I forget the name, all met in the Bahamas for the Nassau Accord. They call it the Nassau Accord, where they were, at the time of the Cold War against the Soviet Union, they come to an agreement on how the Western world will respond. And that happened in the Bahamas. And we know that there was a number of space shuttles who tend to land right inside the Bahamian waters in their seas, again, showing connectivity to the United States. We always was involved. We always was involved in United States politics and United States social culture, right? We see that in the Gullah Geechee community, they're now reaching or reconnecting with the Bahamas. You see they're now, with their festivals, inviting more Bahamians to come down to explain Junkanoo, because they had their Junkanoo also. And few people would know that our Junkanoo is very similar to Jamaica Junkanoo, to Bermuda's festival, to the Gullah Geechee communities in Georgia, Florida, and that's those certain areas that they had Junkanoo also, right? And our Junkanoo more like was very mask oriented, scary oriented. In fact, it was an insult to be called a Junkanoo. Say, boy, you look like a Junkanoo, which means you look like a scary person, a scary mask. And of course, Junkanoo has evolved over the years, right? And showed a connection there. Then we had a number of investments in the Bahamas, very, very much American. And the S&P Tea Company with the Ocean Club and Hog Island, right? We had a number of multi-millionaires. In fact, if you go in the area by Grey Cliff, Mountbatten House, the Grays, I forget the place where Grey Cliff used to call it before that, but Grays there, that was a home or homes for the rich elite out of England and the United States, right? We were the playground for the wealthy, and they lived near Bay Street. And of course, Government House had a number of functions and parties, and the wealthy of the United States came to the Bahamas. So we always had that connectivity. And this is where we had the School of the Dundas, where a number of Bahamians learned how to be butlers and housekeepers, right? We had some of the best butlers. In fact, if you watch the movie that showed the Duke of Windsor took his Bahamian butler to England to live abroad, and we must honor and herald him too. And his name escapes me at this present time. But even in the movie, they referenced the Bahamian butler and tried put on that Bahamian accent in the movie. But it shows our significance there, right? And showing again the Bahamian American connectivity. When the Duke came and lived in the Bahamas, marrying his American wife, the divorcee, we had that connectivity of her American influence, her American lifestyle in living in the Bahamas. And they used to jet back and forth to the United States and to the Bahamas. So we had a huge American influence. I see I have a caller here, so I'll pause for a minute and engage this caller as we talk about Bahamian independence, American independence, and our connectivity to the United States over the years, and how our relationship to the United States must be heralded and celebrated. But we must tell the stories. We must tell the stories so Bahamians who do not know, who are not familiar, should be familiar that we two peas in the pod, we brothers, we are distant cousins, that United States, to me, has a duty of care to remember and herald the Bahamas. Let's go back to the phone calls. Guardian Radio AM, you're live.
Good morning, Mr. Newry. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Okay, man. I tell the story all the time that I remember my grandmother. She had six sons, and she used to do what they call seamstress work, and she taught her six sons how to sew. And right behind, going east of Cathedral on King Street, right behind the end of Cathedral Yard, there was a Mr. Lunn's Tailoring. And all my father and his brothers used to do tailoring at Mr. Lunn's Tailoring through King Street. They used to make suits for the Duke of Windsor back in the day. And I remember as a youngster going to my father's tailor shop, watching him do suits. And when I was graduating from government, I asked him to teach me sewing. And he sucked his teeth. He said me, why go and look for a real job? What you want to do tailoring for? And guess what happened? All the Bahamian stuff sewing, and the Haitians came in here, and they came in a mass of tailoring. Now, the only people you find around there doing tailoring is the Haitians. You know what they talk about? Have a good day.
Well, thank you very much. And even as we, and I appreciate that, because it remind me of another time, or another story about how we connect to the United States. When the United States occupied Haiti, right, in early 1900s, they needed a workforce that spoke English. The Haitians spoke Creole, French, and the Americans spoke English, right? So they imported Bahamians to work there. So we had scores, if not hundreds, of Bahamians who came from the southern islands of the Bahamas, the Fergusons, the Smiths, who went to work alongside the Americans who was occupying the Haiti, the Americans who occupied Haiti, and some of them never came back. They never came back. So in Haiti, you will find surnames like Ferguson, like Forbes, Major, right? And a number of South Bahamians, not when I say Southern Islander Bahamian names, who emigrated to Haiti to work with the United States, got married, with whatever it is, and they never came back. Now they are part of the Haitian culture, Haitian people, but they have ties to the Bahamas. At one point in time, there was also a discrepancy over the island Inagua. And when you say, what do you mean by a discrepancy over the island Inagua? There were so many people in Inagua that spoke Creole, right? Because of how close it was, that because this is near when they had the Haitian Revolution, they claimed Inagua for themselves and said, this is our part of Haiti. In fact, the president or emperor, and forgive me that I don't know which is which at the time, he was made overtures by the U.S. Congress president, whoever it is, and the United States attempted to purchase Inagua from the Haitian government. And they made overtures to purchase it. It got in the heirs of the United Kingdom, right? Our government, our king. And you said, no, but Inagua doesn't belong to Haiti. And the United States said, but we already started making effort to purchase this. And of course, the British said, no, we're willing to go in war for this land. This is part of the crown in the Bahamas. And so that sale was thwarted when they got involved. But again, that shows the connectivity and history of the Bahamas to the United States. And then, of course, later on, subsequential, the Bahamas to Haiti, right? And so that was a story that few Bahamians are aware of, and we should be aware of as part of our general consciousness of ourselves, or who we are, where we're moving toward, especially our connection to the United States over the years, right? United States once invaded the Bahamas. United States tried to buy Inagua via Haiti, and back and forth. All right, the declaration of war against the Bahamas by the United States at one point in time, right? We have connectivity to America, and it's something to celebrate and something that we need to tell our story, especially with our tourism product to say, do you know that our significance, our history to the United States has been long standing? Anyway, we're going to take a quick commercial break here. I'm enjoying this conversation because I try my best to enlighten a number of Bahamians about our Bahamian history. And I want people to challenge, I want people to go and research these things, right? Because I think we all should know these things. As we celebrate our independence, as we help the United States celebrate their independence. Yeah, we have a long line of history and connection to the United States, and we just need to remind them as we celebrate ourselves. Guide Radio AM, we'll be right back.
Who's back?
It's that time again for the 31st annual Michael Scootery Peace on the Streets Basketball Classic.
Bring it on now, let's go.
Whether you're a player or a fan, you don't want to miss this one. The action starts July 13th at the Hope Center. Log on to peaceonthestreets.com and register.
Come on, everybody, we're going!
That's the Peace on the Streets Basketball Classic, where we shoot hopes instead of guns.
Game time.
Change doesn't happen in sound bites. It happens when people come together and actually talk. The Forum is that conversation, where Bahamians from all walks of life work through the issues that affect us all, challenge each other, and find solutions together. Every Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. The Forum with Ricardo Wells. Coming this Saturday to Guardian Radio.
We're gonna give you a check every week for a year. Percy's Pension Plan, Island Game, keep you winning. Percy's Pension Plan, dream big, we will help you live it. Percy's Pension Plan, Island Game, we got you. Percy's Pension Plan, from the friends you can trust. If winning is a must, go play the game you know, cause your best chance is with us. The most trustworthy name is Percy's Island Game. So put 20 on your account and ride this easy train at Percy's Island Game.
Headed to South Florida soon? Holiday Inn Express in Plantation welcomes you to the heartbeat of Florida fun. Whether it's business or pleasure, the Holiday Inn Express is close to sensational shopping, captivating dining, and nightlife. Elevate your Florida experience. Sleep well and rest easy at Holiday Inn Express. Complimentary breakfast buffet featuring seasonal favorites. Keep up your fitness routine in our 24-hour on-site fitness center with cardio equipment and free weights, or take a refreshing swim in our outdoor pool. Your special Bahamas tourist rate awaits. Holiday Inn Express, 1701 North University Drive, in Plantation. Book your getaway now. Call directly at 954-472-5600 or the sales department for reservations and additional information.
It is now 11:45, and when it's 11:45, it is everything Island Game, right? Attention, Island Game players. Percy's Pension Plan is now accepting applications. Deposit $25, and you are officially in the running for a weekly salary of up to $1,000 a week for a full year. You heard me right. If you deposit $25, that's it. No big money. Deposit $25, you automatically become in the running for a weekly salary of $1,000 a week. That's 52 weeks. That's that's $52,000 for a full year. The application closes on September 8th. Apply now at theislandgame.com. See, that's impressive. That's impressive. So get your account and put down your $25, right? This text says, CA, the problem with history in the Bahamas is that most Bahamians have been brainwashed to believe that history in the Bahamas started in 1967 and that there is no other history. Shake my head. The Bahamas needs to embrace its history since 1492, when Christopher Columbus first arrived in the Bahamas, and other historical events throughout the centuries and our connections to the rest of the world. The Bahamas government needs to reinstall the Christopher Columbus statue in front of Government House and also start promoting the entire history of the Bahamas since at least 1492 till today for tourists and Bahamians. I see the Honorable Wayne Monroe is lobbying to have the Columbus School that bears Christopher Columbus' name, Columbus Primary, to have that name be removed. In global or the world history, the Bahamas has a paragraph. The Bahamas has a paragraph in the world history, right? It's a big thing because a few nations tend to be even mentioned, referenced in world history as being significant. The Bahamas is significant and we have our own paragraph. It's not much, but our own paragraph is centered around Christopher Columbus and our first encounter, or his first encounter with the New World, as he called it, the Western world. That makes us globally significant, that nobody else can take away from us, that we can herald. And few of our tourists even know that Columbus came here first. Mind you, they know who Columbus is because Columbus is globally significant. No matter the bad rap he has and being a murderer and rapist or whatever it is, he's still globally significant. And we must we must herald and remember that we can take advantage of the opportunity of letting the world know that Columbus came here first. You still could tell a story about him being a monster, right? But recognize the issue altogether. So I had a caller called, and I think of the butler. Okay, the butler who was the butler for the governor, the royal governor at the time, was Newman Moxey. Newman Moxey. And like I said, say again? Oh, I said redress? Okay. He was the brother of the now Governor General. Really? That what they say? Okay, I didn't know. It's Newman Moxey was the governor to the... it was the butler to the governor, the Duke of Windsor, and they're saying that he is actually the brother of the governor, the current Governor General. I mean, that's something to herald and explain and go in detail, right? Especially when we have Bahamians doing big things on a global stage, right? Well, good news. Also, when we talk about American history, we must talk about Marcus Garvey, the civil rights movement. The Bahamas played a very instrumental role in the civil rights movement of the United States. In fact, a number of civil rights activists met in the Bahamas. Since they were under surveillance in the United States, they came to the Bahamas where we had liberal black presence who were prominent enough, or they were doing activist work here. And people like Marcus Garvey, people like Martin Luther King. What's that congressman? And the congressman name just escapes me, right? The congressman, in fact, when the congressman was excommunicated would be the right word, no? He was living in the Bahamas, that's my point. And his name escapes me, and hopefully someone texts me in time to remind me of what the congressman name. But we had a number of civil rights activists here, American civil rights activists here in the Bahamas, and using the Bahamas as their launching platform. In fact, Sidney Poitier, when he was involved in local politics, and when I say involved in local politics, he sponsored the PLP. And he brought his movie star personalities who were very active in the civil rights movement to the Bahamas. And we have pictures of American civil rights activists or movie stars campaigning on behalf of the PLP, going to the Family Islands, right? Let me see. Besides Harry Belafonte, the gentleman with the one eye was Frank Sinatra. The black guy who's be with Frank Sinatra, the singer. Kermit, what's the singer name with Frank? Who's be with Frank? Who's the black guy? Who's be with Frank Sinatra? He's a lone black guy. He used to stand out all the time. The actor. I forget to. Sammy Davis? Sammy Davis Jr. We have pictures of Sammy Davis Jr. in the Bahamas campaigning, right? Assisting us in our efforts to become majority rule here in the Bahamas. And of course, we had a number of Bahamians who joined them on their civil rights movement, assisting them with their efforts and so on. But Marcus Garvey stayed in the Bahamas. In fact, when he was banned from coming off the boat because he's doing a cruise ship, and before he got expelled out of the United States, and a number of Caribbean islands did not allow Marcus Garvey to make landfall on their Caribbean nation, said that he's too problematic. The Bahamas allowed him to speak to activists here. Yeah, so that's part of American history that we must celebrate, and we must tell the story. Of course, we know Martin Luther King wrote a number of speeches here in the Bahamas. We know Ernest Hemingway used to live in Bimini, and Bimini was a sleepy town there. I know Ernest Hemingway is a very famous author there. But all of these stories tells a tale about how close the United States, how involved the United States, how involved the Bahamas was or is with the United States. And in Miami still they have houses called Conch House, which is a typical Bahamian wooden structure, which they sell for $1 million. We bulldoze them now here in Nassau. But in the United States, they sell them for $2 and $3 million. We know that we have Conky Joes in the Bahamas, and in Florida Keys, they call them conchs, right? They call the people in Florida Keys the Conch Republic because of their connectivity to the Bahamas. In fact, a number of Bahamians who were migrating up northwards to the United States were born in the Florida Keys. You'll see that in their graveyard, a number of Bahamian surnames, popular Bahamian surnames, permeates and peppers the Florida Keys in their graveyards, and also in Miami, Florida. And we see the influence. We have a congressman who's a Hasty. We have a congresswoman, or mayor, that is, who is a Hannah, right? Who all have ties to the Bahamas, but they are Americans, right? And don't forget the Negro National Anthem was written by two descendants of the Bahamas, Johnson, whose grandfather was Stephen Dillett. So Stephen Dillett's daughter emigrated to the United States, had her Lyndon Johnson, I forget his name. I get Lyndon Johnson, the president of the United States, I had him, the black guy. Okay, so all the names getting him, well, Johnson. And he and his brother, one was the writer of it and one put it into music, wrote the Negro National Anthem, and that too should be a part of Bahamian history, that national anthem should be sung in Bahamian schools, that we could at least appreciate it, of having its roots in the Bahamas. But that's my show today. I wanted to celebrate the United States. I wanted to celebrate the Bahamas. I wanted to do that by exploring, explaining some of the connections over the years that the Bahamas had with the United States. I wanted to make sure that a number of Bahamians are aware, because some of these stories a number of us aren't aware of. And this is where we need to start researching. And hopefully we can partner with the U.S. Embassy in the future to highlight some of these stories. So when Americans come to the Bahamas, we will have a museum, we will have records that they can use, that especially Americans who want to trace their roots back to the Bahamas, right? Like he could go there and get the records and say, yes, I see how I am connected to the Bahamas. This has been Guardian Radio AM with C.A. Newry. You have a wonderful day.
Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, streaming on GuardianTalkRadio.com and the Guardian Radio app, Nassau, Bahamas.